Welcome to Grazing Hell, the one and only podcast made by a cow. And for the second time, because I can't remember what happened, but some technical errors, I am very blessed to have the presence of Broey Deschanel.
Hello.
Woo-woo.
Thank you for having me again.
Yes, no, thank you for coming again. Sorry about first time.
Lucky me, honestly. I get to come back twice. It's an honor.
Exactly. You'll get to meet Siggy again. It's all a blessing, really.
It's all a blessing.
But yeah, how are you? Happy New Year in a couple of days.
Happy New Year.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a lot of discourse about resolutions and how I've seen things along the lines of, oh, don't have New Year's resolutions, love yourself. And I'm like, oh God. I don't know, maybe I'm just like, is this too much positivity? It's okay to have resolutions, right?
I think
you're not going to stick to them.
Each one is kind of just circling around to become the same thing. Like someone's like, don't do New Year's resolutions, love yourself. Someone's like, do New Year's resolutions, love yourself. And it just circles around. It's like, well, it's the same argument both ways. So you're all saying the same thing.
I'm a fan of New Year's resolution. Yeah. Do you have any?
Yes, I think I have a couple. My life has been a chaotic mess, my personal life, which has kind of been fun and bad in many ways.
Nice.
But
love that.
I have resolutions. Learning to just spend a night in and learn to be okay with being alone on a night in, because I rely a lot on my roommate for like company, and I've been like, you just need to get used to enjoying being alone, which I think I used to be really good at, and I've lost over the years. And so now I'm trying to get back into that and like be okay with like silence and just being alone. So that's been one of my resolutions. The other was to get the hell off social media. So kind of those two things.
Yeah, no, it's the same actually for me. I think I need to spend less time on social media. And the problem is that a lot of people I talk to them on Instagram or Twitter. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get people's numbers. So we talk on WhatsApp, and then I'm not constantly going, because whenever I do go on Instagram, I then go down this rabbit hole of looking at everything and then feeling shitty about myself.
Totally.
So, yeah, I think that's also one of mine. And mine is the opposite of yours, is that mine is to be more sociable and go out more. I know that's a bit tricky in...
It's tricky in the pandemic.
Miss Rona.
Hopefully we're on... Well, I can't say anything. I hope in my most optimistic self that we are on the tail end of this. I don't want to say anything.
Well, that's the thing. I'm like, I feel as if we're jinxing it every time we say something.
Every time.
Yeah, I said in the last episode of the podcast, I was like, oh, hopefully next year will be better. Oh, no, then it's going to be double, triple Miss Rona. And then people are like, you predicted Omicron.
Miss Rona is multiplying. She's breeding.
Yeah. She just needs the attention. She just thrives off the attention.
She loves attention. She cannot be alone.
Yeah. And I mean, who are we to judge her? I mean, this with what we do for a living. But yeah,
true.
We don't kill people in the process.
Yeah, so. I'm not infecting anyone, I hope. Maybe with my ideas.
Yeah. But before we get into it, I realised I didn't get you to introduce yourself. In case people aren't familiar with you, do you want to just tell us about what your channel is, what you do, all that,
Yes. Also, stuff. I should say, I'm looking at Tara. Is it Tara or Tara? I've never asked you.
It's Tara.
Tara.
Don't worry.
I got it right in the first place.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Tara on my computer screen, and it looks like I'm very sad and looking down at the floor, but I'm actually looking at Tara. I'm Maia.
That's all right. Yeah. Behind the scenes magic, baby.
This is the behind the scenes. If you could only see my setup right now. But yeah, I'm Maia. I have a YouTube channel called Broey Deschanel, and I make video essays about film, pop culture. I like to kind of integrate some academic analysis in here and there. I've actually had a weird amount of people tell me recently that, like a weird amount of people be like, your essays are like you just got out of university. Or just very like, your essays are like grad
Why does
school.
that feel like a read?
I know. I was like, damn. And they're like, your essays are kind of like grad school 101. And it's like, oh, okay. They kind of are. They are. But it's fine. I'm okay with it.
I mean, I love your videos. And even if they are grad school, I mean, I don't think that's a bad thing. Grad school, grad school's great.
Grad school's great. Not everyone has the opportunity to go to it. So why not make it the idea is accessible.
Bring the education to the masses. You're giving us a service.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just to give context, a lot of your videos are about film and media related things, but you do also talk about social stuff. Like your latest video I loved and thought was just so funny because you were saying that like this is the most petty premise for a video, but and it was all about how the discourse around fast fashion is a bit dodgy, to say the least. Do you want to just tell us a bit about that one?
Yeah, so I actually been finding that there are quite a few, like a lot of people only watch the intro to that video where I'm basically like sadly dunking on a fake teenager. I forgot to say that the username I used in that was a fake username because I wasn't trying to dox anyone on TikTok. But basically, I'm kind of, in the video, I try to kind of poke holes in the logic of the whole argument that being anti-fast fashion is classist. Obviously, there are nuances to that argument and there's validity in it as well. But I think like the general sentiment on Twitter of just kind of shutting down anyone who critiques like fast fashion hauls and stuff like that as being classist has a very flawed logic and tends to ignore the political structures between the global north and south and the way that we kind of ignore worker exploitation in these countries. Like, because I know climate change is a huge, like, it really dominates the conversation about fast fashion, but there is also the problem of exploitation. And I think we just don't look into that enough. So I just kind of wanted to look at that. I wasn't really trying to pose any solutions to the problem because I myself am not perfect. Like, I have shopped from fast fashion in the past. Sometimes I crack and get like a basic tee or something. And I don't think that shopping at fast fashion stores is inherently terrible. It just depends on kind of the consumer mindset that you're going about shopping with and over consuming. And I'm not trying to say I'm exempt from these habits, like I'm not, but I just think it's an interesting thing to think about. So that's why I made that video.
Your sort of it was sparked by the whole trend of Shein hauls, wasn't it? And Shein is a notorious fast fashion site where clothes, I mean, you can feel the quality, you can feel that they're not made of good materials, and you can imagine just how little the workers are paid to make them. I mean, I dread to think. And I think when you're talking about, you know, hauls, I just find it interesting when people say, oh, it's classist, because it's like, I don't think people who are working class are spending $200 at Shein. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just think it seems like a bit of a cop-out argument, and I don't know. I think it's often used as like a lazy way to shut down the conversation. And as you pointed out in your video, it's this idea that how do I phrase it? Because it's hard. Because, you know, how do we sort of justify wanting to consume at the expense of people in other countries? And this is not to say that if you shop fast fashion, you're a bad person. No, I'm not saying that. And if that's all you can afford, do what you got to do. But the whole like overconsumption, if you're going to spend £200 at Shein, maybe you'll be better off spending that £200 on like a business which, like, if you've got that money, spend it on a company that pays their workers well.
Fewer and higher quality garments. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because it's an investment, I think, like investing in clothing. And obviously it's not easy for people to have a lump sum of money to spend investing in whatever high quality garments. But I think generally we should consider that if we can. Like, I think that's the main thing, is if you can do this.
Exactly. Because that's the thing. I think one of the frustrating things is when people talk about this is people say, oh, well, lots of people can't afford it. And it's like, obviously, I'm not talking about someone who can't afford it. Obviously, like, because that would just be absurd to hold them to that standard. But if you are an influencer posting like multiple hauls a week, that implies, and I think it would be fair to assume that you could afford to do otherwise. But yeah, anyway, sorry, I went on a massive tangent there. I was going to ask you about media literacy. So yeah, you talk about in your videos a lot of media literacy in the context of film and TV and that kind of thing. Do you want to just define it for us quickly? I know that's hard.
I will preface that I'm not an expert on this. If there was an expert, I would say Miss Lola, the YouTube channel. She is most definitely an expert. But let me see. I think media literacy is kind of, well, it's both like a field of study and also just like a concept. And it's kind of the idea of being able to recognize media as media. It's being able to recognize the functions that go into media, the functions that are behind media, and being able to understand and critically analyze the messages that media is sending you. So I think it kind of came about in the earlier 20th century. You think a lot about like George Orwell and like different people like that who talk a lot about propaganda and the idea that media can absolutely manipulate public perception. And so I think media literacy slowly over time has evolved into what it is today. I don't think they had a name for it back then, but it's the kind of idea of, being able to understand like the framing behind media, the intention of media, the intended audience behind media, and the medium, and understand the functions of a medium and how that can kind of play into what you're watching. And a lot of schools and like educational systems are starting to work to teach kids how to critically analyze media. I also think we're living in a time in terms of news where this is like, we're facing a huge crisis in media literacy in terms of when you think about like Fox News and fake news and all this stuff. Like, I think we're in a bit of a crisis. So it's just one of the most important things, I think, of our time to be fluent in.
Interesting. Well, that's fascinating. And you mentioned how you feel we're in a crisis. You're Canadian. Mm-hmm. Do you remember learning much about it at school in Canada? Or?
So they were primarily centered on news media and print media. We did a lot of like looking at magazines. All the models are thin. What does that tell us? And like that kind of thing. And like all the models are white. What does that tell us? And that was great and like a great learning experience. But it felt like it was the same thing every year and like pretty rudimentary. I don't think we ever really got to focus on film and TV and in terms of like what those mediums can do in terms of manipulation and manipulating public perception. That was kind of my experience. Did you have media classes?
Not really. Media studies in the UK is very looked down upon. So you can do it as an A-level, you can do it at university. It's not really a thing before the age of 16. I mean, you get dribs and drabs of it in English, I suppose, like English literature, maybe a little bit, a tiny bit, but not really. So it doesn't surprise me that maybe your average Brit doesn't necessarily, I don't know, I think a very common thing here is, oh, it's just a film. Oh, it's just a TV show. Yeah. And that's probably, I'm guessing that's a comment you get every now and then.
Totally. They're like, why are you thinking so hard about this? Stop using big words. And I'm like, I'll take the latter into consideration, but my whole job is overthinking things.
Yeah, well, and what would you say to someone if someone were to say that to you in real life? Like, why do you care about the social implications of Sex and the City? What would you say?
I think media shapes like our entire culture. I mean, it's a chicken and egg situation, like what came first, culture or media, and like who influences who. But I think, at least in terms of Sex and the City, like when you're looking at like a juggernaut of mass media, you're gonna have to take into consideration that it influenced decades of people and it still has an influence today, whether or not that's negative or positive. And to dismiss it as like a piece of just like whatever women's TV is to dismiss like an entire culture that existed back then. And I think a huge part of media literacy is understanding cultural context, which I think is kind of the main goal of my channel, is to like culturally contextualize media objects. I think it's so important.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, just to give you a personal example, and I'll ask you for one in a minute, but a personal example for me is watching media as a teenager, all high school films saying that there's like a mean popular girl and an unpopular nice girl, and the whole just like girls being against each other, the not like other girls thing. That
Yeah.
I think obviously I got that from society, and as you say, it's a chicken and egg thing, but I do really think media justified that to me in a way, and like made it seem aspirational, like especially the not like other girls character. It made it seem, because they were the protagonist, you know, it was like, oh, that's how it's good to be like that, therefore feminine bad, you know, being feminine means you're mean, and it's like, it doesn't actually work like that. And also it also doesn't work, you know, it's this idea, I don't know, it's just interesting, and I think that was something I internalized for a long time, even if I wasn't aware of it at the time. But yeah, I think that's a personal example for me that I can think of. Can you think of any on the top of your head that you think you...
That was a huge, I mean, part of my life as well. Like I spent a lot of time trying to distance myself from feminine things. I spent a lot of time learning masculine, like cultural, the masculine zeitgeist to like get boys to like me. Like I really went out of my way. And I think that's why I look at girls who we call pick-me's with a bit of empathy, because I'm like, our culture shames femininity so much that I don't know if I can look down upon someone who feels that if they embrace it, they'll be, you know, socially ridiculed. Obviously, we're living in a more forgiving time, but like when we were growing up, it was like not okay. And I think, yeah, that's a great example. I'm trying to think of a personal example of media brainwashing me.
I think another one for me that comes to the top of my head is the idea that men and women can't be friends. Or, yeah, if you're really good friends with some, you know, a guy as a girl, you're automatically going to get together. And I think that does a disservice to friendship.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, I think that's one that,
yeah,
that's one.
The nice guy trope as well, too. Like the
friend yeah. Trope. And yeah, like, the one where it's like he knows better than her. He knows what she wants more than she does.
Yeah,
and he's
totally.
like, I knew I was the right guy for you all along. I just needed to wait for you to see it. And it's like, no, that would be kind of stalking in real life.
Totally. I think a lot of these things, like, they're very subtle, but they influence, like, I notice it in my own personal life, like social dynamics of like different groups of people I'm in, like the way that gender and media has very much influenced how we operate with other genders. Like, it's just very interesting.
I have a specific memory of a conversation with a friend of mine who, you know, this happens a lot in Hallmark movies where so there's the protagonist girl. It's a bit like Taylor Swift's music video, You Belong With Me, where the girlfriend is really jealous and is like, oh, you can't be friends with her, and is really mean. And then he realizes that his girlfriend is mean and ends up with the main girl, even if they've been crossing boundaries in the relationship, when actually, now that I watch it, I'm like, oh, the girlfriend was done wrong by, and he was like emotionally cheating on her with our protagonist. But I remember having a conversation with my friend. We were like 16 at the time, and her boyfriend was really inappropriate about his female best friend, and was like, sorry, I said female girl best friend, and would always say she's hot, and like if they weren't together he'd want to be with her, and all these things. Very like, you know, understandably my friend would get quite jealous and feel very insecure. And she was like, oh God, you know what it is? I'm like that girlfriend in the films. He's going to end up with her because I'm too jealous and all this shit. And it's like, I know this word has been, you know, used to the point of redundancy, but he gaslit her. He gaslit her into thinking that like she was just like some crazy jealous girlfriend, when it's like, actually, you know, he said certain things that made her feel like she wasn't enough, and that he did desire someone else, you know? So it's that kind of thing. I'm like, the fact that she specifically said that, she articulated like, oh, I'm like the girl in those films. And it's like, relationships aren't that simple. It's not as simple as like good guy, bad guy, blah, blah, blah. It's like, actually, you know, there's so much more to it. They're so
complicated.
They really are. And I just find that really interesting. And it's just funny. I remember that conversation now, and I just look back and I'm like, yeah.
That's so damaging. Yeah. And like, we do, like, that is really an invention of media. Like, that's not like an inherent like human response to things, I think. Like, that's something that we've been taught. And I think that's why we're so focused on, I kind of get a bit frustrated with the way that I think representation has become like the only lens through which we look at media. And like I look through media through a representational lens almost in every video, because it's the most, I think it's the most obvious way to like look at media. But at the same time, like, yeah, it's so important, because look at the different ways that media has influenced the way we interact with different social groups. Like, I'm thinking about Yara Zaid's video when she talks about, yeah, I think it's Yara. She talks about the Princess Diaries and the way that like, yeah, no, I think she talks about it. Maybe, I don't know. Actually, I don't want to say that too quickly. Someone has a video where they talk about the Princess Diaries and the straightening of Mia's hair as being seen as like the ultimate like makeover kind of, and like then they kind of go
I think that might have been Shan. I think that might have been Shania, you know?
Shania.
No.
I think Mina Lay may have also talked about it. One of them did.
Mina has a video all about makeovers. But Shania also talked about that.
They may have both. I think there might be some overlap. I think maybe
we have a lot
Mina,
of
though, actually.
We have a lot of queens on the
Yara has a Princess Diaries video, but I don't know if she does. Yeah. But yeah, and just kind of the way that like makeover scenes, like, and this is something that I didn't really think about growing up, and like watching these videos, I was like, wow, that really explains a lot to me. Like the different ways that these makeover scenes would make the traits of a before kind of culturally bad, or like
glasses,
desirable. Yeah, glasses, like for like, you know, curly hair and like all these sorts of
thick eyebrows,
which I was like, as a particularly hairy child, I was like, they're plucking her eyebrows. But yeah, and I think that's why representation, like, people are so focused on it right now. That is like probably like the most potent way that audiences have been manipulated, just in the way that human beings are represented on screen. So I think a huge facet of media literacy is, looking at representation. And I think that's what a lot of video essayists kind of talk about.
So you mentioned that you think maybe there's an over-focus on that, or that it's not, that maybe there's other aspects people are missing. What do you think we're missing in the conversation?
I think it's really complicated. Like, obviously, I think representation is like a really important lens to focus on. But I think like sometimes I just get frustrated because I'll make a video where I don't look at something from a representational lens, and people get really upset and they're like, but why didn't you talk about these different ways that this piece of media didn't represent people, or like ignored people or erased certain groups of people? And I was like, but that's not what this specific video is talking about. Like, I'm looking at this from another lens. Like, I think with my Love Island video, people got upset that I didn't talk about the way that Love Island, the way it treats like LGBTQ people, the way it treats its Black contestants, and like that, those are really great topics. There's many videos that do look at that.
There are many videos on that already.
Yeah, and they've already kind of looked at it through that lens. And so I was like, I'm gonna fill another lens, because no one's talked about this particular angle, and it was about like surveillance and the way that we surveil ourselves. And it's just a bit frustrating because I think different videos have different like focuses. I think we complain about like not being able to cover every single angle of a topic, because that wouldn't make for a very good essay. I think essays need to be focused and like need to look at a certain lens. And there's other aspects of media. I also think we miss, like, I think we're starting to lose like the technical aspects of film as well. Like, I think a lot about Lady Bird and how it gets written off as like a silly whatever coming of age movie. But at the same time, I think it's like so technically masterful in a way that we kind of dismiss. And I think I want to see more video essays. Maybe I can make one about the mastery behind Lady Bird and like the different ways that it's technically a really well-made film.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think, you analyze it in the same way you'd analyze literature or, painting. It's, the framing and the colors and, all the aspects of it. I know what you mean, actually. I think, you can talk about so many different facets. And yeah, it is interesting what you said about when you don't talk about representation as much, people sort of feel like you're missing something. But I think, I don't know, as you say, a good video essay is focused. And I think when I try and be general in my videos and cover everything, they're not as good. Like, I think it's so much better to have an angle. Like in my heterofatalism video, which is all about the theory that women are kind of straight women or, you know, women who date men are sick of men, but they still date men, but they just complain about it as they do it. Understandable.
Great
and
video.
someone commented like, oh, weird that you're not talking about men. You could talk about incels and all this shit. And I'm like, there are thousands and thousands of videos on incels and MRAs and all that stuff. Like, this is a very specific phenomenon and theory by an academic called Indiana Sarisan. And that was what I wanted to talk about. And I think the whole point was you know, what's women? What's the women? What's up with the women?
Yeah. What's up
so
with
I just
women?
thought that was a funny comment. Yeah, it was just funny because it's like, when we talk about are the straights okay, I think maybe we do over focus on the men, because it's like, well, no, there's at least two people in a straight relationship.
Yeah.
So,
and I think it's bringing something new to the table when you're making a video. Like, this is kind of how you approach research, and like, we're not like working in academia, but like, you do approach something with, there's a gap in this literature. What can I fill? Like, what can I bring that's new to the table? And like, you were bringing something new to the table. Reiterating what everyone else has already said about something isn't really like, what's the purpose of, you know, making the video about it then, you know? That is a great video.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So I asked earlier about whether you get comments saying, oh, it's just a movie, blah, 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 blah. Which video do you think you get those kinds of comments most on?
The Parasite one. Maybe because it has the most
Which
comments.
is your
like,
most...
my most
That's
viewed.
your most viewed video, right?
Yeah, it's the most viewed. I think also because like I am analyzing the shit out of that movie. Like, I'm really like, and this meaning means this thing, and then this meaning, whatever creeps into another meaning. It's definitely like so pretentious. I look back on it and cringe, but yeah, most of the comments are like, babe, it's just a movie. Like, it's not that deep. But it is deep. Bong Joon-ho was thinking a lot when he made this movie. Do you have a video that you get the most comments on that on?
You know, I don't get it as much because I don't talk about media as much, but I think I think people do say like maybe you're pathologizing about the internet too much. So talking about, you know, pickup artists and that kind of thing, they're like, oh, they're just weird guys. And I'm like, they are, but they also have an audience. So
yeah,
they're appealing to someone, and that's a problem.
If people are watching it.
Yeah, exactly. They're making a living of it. Yeah, so I think those comments come more from, as you mentioned earlier, media that is geared towards women and is therefore not seen as high culture. So, you know, the concept of like high and low culture and that kind of thing. And content and art aimed at women, particularly teenage girls, is always poo-pooed upon.
Get the poo-poo all the time.
Yeah. So, you know, things like Twilight, things like, and, you know, you're allowed to think those things are bad, but a lot of the time we thought things were bad, and I look back and I'm like, no, that's actually like a great film, or that's a fantastic album, or that kind of thing. Obviously you watch Mila Tequila, right?
Oh, I love Mila Tequila.
Mila Tequila makes videos all about sort of the pop icon girlies retrospectively. So she's made, you know, long essays on Amanda Bynes, or they're kind of like biographies, but also deep dives into like how the media treats them.
Her primary source research is like unparalleled. She is doing work. Like, she is finding like real source material. I'm just so impressed.
No, she's incredibly thorough. And she recently did a video all about Britney Spears, and all about her sort of eras, all of her eras, all of her, you know, albums and that kind of thing. And I remember as a teenager being all like, not like other girls about Britney. And I look back and I'm watching that video and I'm like, holy shit, Britney was incredibly talented. She really thought a lot about her videos. Like, they all had a real artistic vision, and they were hers. They were her vision. And her music as well, like, you know, the lyrics I think are like have more to say than we give them credit for. The same goes to Taylor Swift, as though like a lot of people say, oh, she just writes about ex-boyfriends, and it's like, no, she's a storyteller. Like, I you know, so I just think it's interesting. Like, I love that we're going through this kind of renaissance of giving things appreciation that they didn't have before. Jennifer's Body is a great example of that as well. Do you want to talk about that? Because you made a video on that.
Well, I think like you made it, like that's a great point about media literacy in general. Like if we're people at the time were watching, you know, Britney, and they're watching Diane Sawyer, Barbara Walters, like all these like people interviewing Britney, and the way that she's framed through their eyes and framed through like the way the news was representing her, the way the tabloids are representing her, and people's inability to kind of analyze media while it's happening. Like I think that we need to learn how to do it in the moment. And I was saying that about celebrities. Like we're it's so easy to look back on female celebrities and be like, we treated them badly. But right now, like we're still treating female celebrities like garbage.
Absolutely.
Like I think about Addison Rae a lot. I'm not saying she's a great person. She's problematic, blah, blah, blah. But like we're still kind of abusing this person nonetheless. Like, and it tends to only ever be women, it feels like. And so I think that's
the TikTok girlies, the level of vitriol they get. And I know this is an argument, like I'm not saying that you can't criticize one person because there's someone worse out there, but like the amount of flack they get considering what they've actually done. Meanwhile, we've got like the Paul brothers and people who are like texting
whose careers are just soaring still. And I think we're so, I think we need to be able, and like myself included, like just look at the way everything is framed, the way public figures are framed, the way media is framed, the way movies are framed, like Jennifer's Body, for example, like the way it was framed at the time in the news media, the way it was marketed. Like if you were to look at Jennifer's Body, Yara has a video on this, like Jennifer's Body versus the marketing of Jennifer's Body, and the intended audience of the marketing was boys. The intended audience of the movie was not necessarily just teenage boys, horny teenage boys. So it's like, you know, if we were able to do that at the time, maybe this could have saved, you know, Megan Fox and Diablo Cody's careers. But we just can't. We can't critically analyze media, myself included. I'm not saying that I'm like immune to this.
Oh, I think you do a great job.
I get caught up in zeitgeists.
Well, when you talk about a crisis, what are like big things that you think we need to fix? Is it critics? Is it audiences? Is it both? Who do you think aren't being sort of?
Well, I think what's scary, like I think the scariest thing about the crisis is digital media literacy. I think a lot of what we're seeing right now is like older generations because they're not digital natives like we are, and like we're a little bit, because it was kind of ingrained in us at a young age, like we're a little bit more immune to kind of like filter bubbles and propaganda on social media, whereas like older generations didn't necessarily grow up with those comprehension skills. Those analytical skills when it comes to digital media. So like we're seeing so many older generations be manipulated by like Facebook ads and filter bubbles and like Fox News and all this stuff. So I think the problem's like a lot more invisible now. Like we can't really pinpoint exactly where, like who's doing what, where. It's a lot more like decentralized, all the manipulations like kind of everywhere. And like the ads on Instagram, it's so difficult, especially for older generations, to look at their, like, let's say Instagram and see an ad that's been curated directly for them because of like whatever data mining and stuff. And to be able to be like, and be able to think critically about it. And like, I'm saying older generations, we, like us too. I think it's like a really invisible problem now, and it's becoming like more and more intense. So I don't know. I don't know if there's like one place to put it. Like, I think there is an onus on us as an audience to like learn how to critique these things. But there's also an onus on these like huge evil corporations to like not brainwash us. So it's kind of like, it's a two-way street, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think it's I don't know, because I think I'm someone who really struggles with the idea of how much art matters. I feel like this is some weird like internal dialogue I've always got going on in my head. I used to want to be an actor. I used to want to work in theatre.
Same.
And yeah, well, exactly. And I think for me, as like, I love theatre, and sometimes I watch it and I'm like, oh wow, this is so meaningful, this is so wonderful. And then other times I watch it and I'm like, is this just pretentious bullshit? What am I doing with my life? Like, I could be out there actually helping people and I'm trying to prance around on stage. I'm not saying that's what it actually is. To my actor friends watching this, but I'm saying as like myself that and I get that on YouTube as well. I'm literally just sitting talking. What am I like? Is that actually contributing anything? Does any of this matter? Does it matter? And then other times I'm like, no, it does matter because it affects people. So I have this. I'm like, does it actually matter or not? So I think I'm very in my head about that, honestly. it's
an eternal problem. Like, I think theater is like very susceptible to being like so pretentious. Like, I've like watched a lot of plays and been like, oh no, this is like just stupid.
Exactly.
And like so self-indulgent.
They're taking themselves so seriously.
Yeah.
And they think they're changing the world. They're not.
But then at the same time,
not, like, baby.
Yeah, you're not. But at the same time, you are.
So yeah, you have a theatre background as well, and we both learned about Brecht, right? So
about
Brecht.
Brecht was basically a playwright in the like early mid 20th century, and his whole mantra was that plays have the ability to manipulate audience perception, and so his whole goal was to make his plays as like unimmersive as possible, and to constantly remind the audience that they're watching a play, basically. And this was kind of a response to like propaganda and like whatever, that kind of thing. And so right now I'm kind of working on a video. I'm trying to figure out how to bring licorice pizza into it, because I saw licorice pizza yesterday and I like have really mixed feelings about it. But I'm basically using, I don't know if there's an essay called The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, and it's by this scholar named Walter Benjamin. And at the end of the essay, he goes on this kind of weird tangent because he's writing in the middle of the Nazi regime and like Leni Riefenstahl's like propaganda films. And he basically talks about how like film is one of the most powerful propaganda tools, because instead of like looking at a piece of art like on a wall where your own eyes are looking at the art and your own brain is making decisions about it, the camera becomes your eyes and tells you what to look at and how to look at things, and it's like framing everything. And so he's like really worried about the future of film, and I think his worries have kind of been shoved under the carpet a little bit, and we've stopped looking at film as like one of the most powerful mediums for manipulation in a way. And I think that it's interesting to think about, like subjectivity in film and like how it manipulates our eyes, and how the camera, because it's meant to be invisible, is one of the most powerful tools for shaping perception. I don't know, I went on a tangent there.
No, I absolutely agree, and I think it is something that we underestimate. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, of course. Especially when it comes to like political stuff. And I mean, it's very, and the way we edit things, you know, if we take other people's things, we edit them and change the framing, and that changes the meaning of them. And I mean, yeah, it makes all the difference. I want to ask you a question, because I'm curious. And now you might disagree with the notion that a piece of media can be misunderstood. Some people might argue that there are, you can kind of take whatever meaning you want. My question to you is, what pieces of media do you think are some of the most misunderstood?
Oh, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is 500 Days of Summer. I feel like the whole framing of it I misunderstood it when it came out, and like it's actually just through video essays. I'm really pumping us up right now. It's through video essays that I really came to understand like that it like the message it wanted us to take away was the complete opposite. But like it's so, and I think this is another paradox of film, is that since we're looking at it through Joseph Gordon-Levitt's eyes, it's really hard to see the irony in him as being kind of like an unreliable narrator. Like it's really hard to portray unreliable narrators in film, and I think 500 Days of Summer is one of the best examples of that. Is it kind of was like a failed experiment, and now we can look back and appreciate it for its like whatever it was doing, but like at the time it was completely misinterpreted.
Yeah, and I think you can see this, and this is I think another thing with the idea of media literacy and art, is that even a show like You that is telling us, he's the bad guy. And even though that it's pretty clear he is, he still has people that are on his side. And I think some of that is because it's through his lens. And it's really fascinating. I mean, a big one that comes to mind for me, I think, is The Matrix. Because obviously the whole like blue pill, red pill thing is used as like taking the red pill is the idea of finding the truth. And right wingers use this. And then it's, you know, obviously it turns out that The Matrix was made by 2 trans women. And I kind of love that.
And it's like an allegory.
I bet the right wingers lost their shit.
I think they just pretend that that's not a thing. They're like, we didn't hear that.
I think they do, yeah. And another one I think is 1984, which I'm tempted to make a video on, is that people are completely going to town on 1984, being like masks the 1984 and fucking claiming that we're being censored to the extent of 1984. And it's like, I mean, if you live in North Korea, yeah. But
wearing a mask yeah, the anti-maskers have really been co-opting the language like so much, like not leftist but just like so much like like liberation language almost.
Yeah,
so it's like, oh babe,
like with the Holocaust and
with the Holocaust
parallels and all this shit, and it's pretty fun.
I think even Euphoria comes to mind in terms of like, I think like I love Euphoria in terms of like a filmmaking perspective. Like I love it, but you know, it does kind of, it operates on this really uncomfortable paradox between like depicting, and I know this is the thing with Licorice Pizza too, like depicting and endorsing, and like the way that let's say for the drug thing for example, like Rue's drug addiction, I came away from it being like, wow, that was a really accurate portrayal of drug addiction and teenage drug addiction and whatever. But at the same time, like the show is so cool, and like the way that it's filmed and like the cool lighting and like the way that they film her like drug benders is very sensational. And so some people could come away from it being like, that's really cool. And I think even with like the Maddie and Nate situation, like people coming away romanticizing their relationship, it's like the relationship is inherently bad in the show, but the way that it's filmed sometimes romanticizes it. And so it's kind of this like contradiction.
It's really hard, isn't it? And I think, you know, and I just wonder, I think you can never get around that because art is always going to be interpreted in different ways. My question to you is, do you think films or certain things can have like a specific message or meaning, or do you think anything's kind of up for interpretation? And if someone reads 1984 and thinks it's about masks or some shit, that's a bad example because I don't know. Do you think all interpretations are valid, or do you think there's such thing as a wrong interpretation?
That's a really great question.
It's hard though because I don't know the answer.
I don't know.
Why I'm kind of asking you.
Because it's like the wrong interpretation to me is the one I don't agree with. You know, like that's the wrong one. Whereas like I do believe in death of the author, and like authorial intent to me doesn't really matter a lot of the time. But then when you look at the Matrix, you're like, it contextualizes it.
Well, that's the thing I was going to ask, because I was thinking like, if you read 1984, you know, and you know that George Orwell went to Spain to fight the fascists, then you wouldn't think that it's, you know, for Trump or whatever. But if it's but if you, if you believe in death of the author and that it doesn't matter, because frankly, once it's written and it's what you take from it, then who am I to say that any interpretation is wrong?
Exactly.
So it's really
it's a dangerous, it's like, it's a little dangerous. I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah.
It
is, isn't it?
Mind blew our own minds. We're so smart.
So what have been your favorite like film or TV shows in the past year or two that you
have
discovered? They don't have to have come out recently, but just that you've
discovered
in the past.
I've been such a plebe with my media recently. Like I only watch bad.
Oh, mine are all very pop and culty, so I'm not going to judge.
I mean, God, what have I even watched? I think like if I'm gonna talk about media, like something I consumed a lot, Love Island I watched for 6 months straight. Not to endorse the show, but it is absolutely something I loved this year, which is not great. In terms of
no,
good, I watched The Talented Mr. Ripley this year, and I really liked it.
Okay.
It doesn't get talked about a lot. It's a little bit dodgy when it comes to like gay panic in film. But in terms of like stylistically, it's a really cool film, and Jude Law is just really hot. So
yeah, I like that.
It's towing the line.
I don't know if I've seen it. You know,
I recommend. It's interesting.
Yeah. I'm really bad when it comes to films. I don't have the attention span. I'm much more of a TV gal myself.
Very fair.
Could watch several hours of a Netflix show, but for some reason can't bloody sit down for a film. I don't know what it is. I think it's investment in characters. I think that might be the slight part of it.
That's super fair.
I feel more invested. And best shows I've watched in the past year are Detroiters. Have you seen I Think You Should Leave?
Yes, Tim Robinson.
Really absurd comedy. It's by
all of my friends are obsessed with it. Okay.
Detroiters is a buddy comedy, and it's very funny, and I think very underappreciated. Second being Pen 15.
Good point. Okay, that is what you're really. Yeah, that's amazing. That show is so underrated. Weirdly.
Oh, it's amazing. It's actually like one of my favorite shows I've ever seen. Basically, the premise is it's two women in their early 30s, and they're reenacting kind of their middle school experiences, and they're the only adults, but they're playing their like 12, 13-year-old selves, and they're acting everyone else in the cast is their actual age, right? So like 12-year-olds, and it's just so funny and so good and so heartfelt and just so
they took
clever.
They took a really difficult premise and like really executed it almost perfectly, I think.
Yeah, like they handle it so well with care. Like they made it, because I was always wondering like, oh, what if there's like a kiss scene or whatever? And there's like information about this in the credits, but they do it in a way that makes it so that none of the younger cast members are around or involved. Like the kind of like stunt double. It's kind of like using a stunt double. It's kind of so it's really, really well done. Just really funny and great.
And it's so complicated. Like it deals with such complicated emotions so poignantly.
I know. And it's so funny. It's
really funny. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I've got two more that I think really stuck with me this year. And the first being Dark on Netflix. Have you seen Dark?
I have not seen Dark, but I have heard of it. Yes.
It's a German show, and it's all about like time travel, and it's fantastic. It's I'm not usually like a fancy time travel kind of gal, but yeah. So I just love when a non-English speaking show does really well. I'm always rooting for it, because I think a lot of media that gets critically acclaimed, like the focus is so much on English speaking media, so it's really cool to have international media. Yeah,
I think.
And then the last, have you seen Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
No, everyone's telling me to watch it all the time, and for some reason I like haven't. I don't know what it is. It's
great. It's very much of its time. Like the effects are very 90s. The relationships are very 90s. The jokes, some of them are very 90s, but I still love it. It's still just, I love it. I'm a stan. I'm a big Buffy stan, and I think you would enjoy it too. Based on, like, I
know I would like it. I think that's. I need to watch it.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no. Are there any other ones that spring to mind for you?
Once you started talking, I was like, oh, I'm thinking of things. I watched Another Round, that Mads Mikkelsen movie, which is so beautiful. It's about a friend group of alcoholics, but like they're all like, they make like a goal to consume like a certain level of blood alcohol like a day or like get to a certain blood alcohol level every day. And it's like the most interesting premise. It's beautifully done. It's just gorgeous. I highly recommend. I watched The Green Knight. I thought that was amazing. I've been watching all the popular stuff. I only consume popular content these days. But
no judgment. That's the thing, like I think it's the same with music as well, when people are like, what music you into? And I'm like, I'm just listening to what everyone else is. I have nothing niche or cool or micro to recommend you. So yeah. But
all my music, people think I'm pretty. Yeah, my music taste is very lame.
No, same,
it's fine.
Same.
I'm fine with it.
My friend said something the other day, which I was like, you know what, that describes me. She said, I like dumb hot pop music for dumb hot people. And I was like, yeah, okay, I think that's me. I think
the bimbofication of music.
Yeah, just like I listen to like Kim Petras and Ariana Grande and I love me some dumb hot pop for dumb hot people.
I made a tweet that was like, my taste in music screams my parents were yuppies in the 80s and had a really big coffee table.
Yeah.
All my friends are like, I grew up with the Beatles and soft rock, and I'm like, I grew up with very like lame 90s ambient soundscapes and like Moby. So
yeah,
that's like my taste, but like not in a cool way, in a very uncool way. So
yeah, my parents were obsessed with Nico. Nico and the Velvet Underground.
So they were cool.
They were cool, yeah. And I didn't like them until I was older, because when you're a teenager, you don't want to like what your parents like, right?
Yeah.
And then I learned to appreciate Nico and love Patti Smith now, and people like that. But I think, yeah, when you grow up with something, you do have this tendency to want to push away from it, I think.
Yeah. And then you get older and you're like, oh, I like it. I'm like, oh, I'm naturally inclined towards this.
Yeah.
Weirdly.
You've got exciting stuff coming this year, though. I mean, a trailer has dropped for the Mothership or the Mother Show, as you said.
The Mother Show. God, I'm just for context, so
Broey's doing a show with Amanda the Jedi, Friendly Space Ninja, and who else was involved? Bruno.
Yeah, he has a YouTube channel. He does parkour.
Awesome. Oh, cool. Was anyone else involved? Was that it?
It was just the four of us. It's mostly just the three of them. I guested for 4 episodes, maybe more than that. Yeah, I'm not sure, but I went for a few days in Montreal, and it was awesome. It was fun. It was a crazy experience.
Yeah, and it's called the Mothership, because obviously Space Ninja and Amanda's the Jedi. But there's this clip where they're all like, the Mothership, but then you just go, the Mother Show.
I was like, I think I was so tired. I was like so loopy by the end of it. Yeah, I had no idea what was going on.
And there was this comment under the trailer on Dylan, Friendly Space Ninja's channel, being like, this is the most broy thing I've ever seen.
I know. I was like, I don't know if I want to be perceived like that. Is that the most me thing? Just embarrassing myself. But I was like, that's
it was
cute.
Adorable. It was the cutest thing ever. It was so funny. I was like, I cannot wait for this to come out.
Oh God, I think I say some pretty unhinged things in that. I was in like a fevered state.
Yeah, you know what? I'm excited for your takes that are on the same plane as smell as a social construct. I want to hear you say that again, please.
I definitely have some dumb takes on that. And we talk about dating and stuff. I'm like giving out sex advice. I was like, oh God.
Yes.
Loopy
I'm
stuff.
so excited. So this is quite Matrixy. We're in a podcast recommending another podcast that isn't even out yet. But it's going to be out soon-ish, right? I don't know. Maybe.
January 7th.
Oh, God, I'm so excited. Yeah, so plug that, the Mothership podcast.
Mothership.
Do you have any goals for this year?
Career-wise? I think
pay rent.
Like monthly video, try to find I think my work ethic has kind of waned a little bit in the past few months since I kind of graduated school. I was for some reason way more diligent about doing stuff when I was way busier, and now that I'm less busy, I'm like,
I think
my
that's
work ethic
quite
is just...
common. The busier you are, the more you get stuff done because you feel more, I don't know.
Exactly. And then,
Yeah.
you know, I was talking to Amanda and Dylan of Friendly Space Ninja fame, and they were like, I work every day. Like they have like crazy work ethics. And I was like, oh.
I mean, Amanda makes like multiple videos a week. I don't know how the flip
they're like
does
putting out content, both of them.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to just get a bit of a better work ethic because I need to find a better balance between like making videos and like making stuff for my Patreon. Like I'm really trying to, I think I want to focus on Patreon a lot this year. And just make content for them because they're out here supporting me. So I think that's kind of one of my main career goals. Yeah. Do you have any for this year?
I would love to do a collab on the main channel. No, hint, hint. They're very yeah, more collabs. I think I would like to bring in other perspectives into my videos, especially because I want to do like longer form, more epic video essays.
Right.
You know, quality over quantity, not the other way around. You know what I mean? So I'd like to bring other people onto the channel. Well, I want to come to Canada.
Come here.
Yes.
I'm not going to vouch for it. I don't know if it's that great here, but you should come nonetheless. We're really nice, apparently.
Apparently. Yeah. No, and I'd like to visit the US again. I think I want to visit California because I grew up there. So I want to visit family, friends, and maybe drop by, say hello to other creators, and maybe work on stuff with them. But that obviously, would be awesome. It all depends on Miss Rona.
If Miss Rona gets her act together, definitely traveling. Yeah,
she needs to pipe down. I don't believe in telling women to calm down, but in this case,
Miss Rona needs to, calm it right down. Yeah, it's funny because I'm trying to exchange places with you. Like, I really want to go to London because I have a lot of friends.
Oh, if you come here, you'll get to meet Siggy. We can go watch some pretentious theatre together. It will be a hoot.
Theatre in London,
There's so much theatre in London, good and pretentious.
The epicenter.
Exactly, no. That is something I will vouch for London. We have a load of theatre. Like because I feel like in a lot of places you just get musicals, and I don't actually like musicals. Whereas here we have loads of plays as well, which is great.
Yeah, everyone should see plays. I think that's important. I mean, accessibility is a problem, but if you can, go do it. Yeah, I would love to go to Portugal. I've been thinking about that a lot recently.
Ooh, you should. Yeah.
I've been before and I love it. So.
Oh, nice. Well, those are good goals for the year.
Yeah.
And fingers crossed we can make them happen. Let's see at the end of the year. Maybe we could do a year in review. Like an episode exactly the same day next year.
A recap,
Yeah. I think that would be nice. But yeah, so do you want to tell the people where they can find you?
Yes. So you can find me at Broey Deschanel on YouTube. You can also find me at Broey_Deschanel on Instagram. I'm trying to promote my Twitter less, so I think just don't follow me on Twitter. And you can also find me on Patreon at Broey Deschanel. I keep it consistent.
Yeah, no, I love that. And thank you so much for coming today. It's been an absolute delight.
Thank you.
Really, always just lovely to chat to you. And I'm excited to see what you come out with this year. Always
thank you so much for having me.
On. No, my pleasure. Do you have your cat today, or are you in a different place?
I do. Where'd she go? I'm actually going to check for 1 second.
So whilst she's looking for a cat, I'm just going to share some fun facts with you. Her cat is called Mooney. How cute is that?
Oh, there she is. I got her.
Oh my gosh, she's here. And she is beautiful. She is so beautiful. Oh my gosh, she's gorgeous. And she's called Mooney, and she's got like a face which is split in half, like half black, half... Is it tortoise? Is she tortoise shell?
She's a calico. I don't know if that's the same thing, actually. I wonder. But she's a little...
I don't know. She's beautiful, whatever. So tell us all about her. How old is she? What's her likes, dislikes? What's her goals in life?
She's 3 years old. And she's a baby. And she loves, what does she love? She loves boxes on the ground. She loves garbage. She doesn't like vacuum cleaners, and she really doesn't like her crate, her carrying Great. She really doesn't like. Oh, and she loves boys. she's a
boy cats or human boys?
Mooney's a bit of a pick-me. No, human boys. Anytime like a man enters the house, like whether it's like my dad or like whoever, Mooney is all up in their business. She loves boys.
Boys, boys, boys. Ba, 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 ba. Boys, boys, boys. Oh, I love her. What a gorgeous girl. Can we just give a round of applause to Mooney? Clap, 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 clap. Oh,
Mooney, famous.
Oh, she's so beautiful.
She's yanking my stuff out. Ooh, okay. Where's Siggy?
Let me see if I can find her. She doesn't like the microphone. Oh, hello.
She's an Italian greyhound, right?
Yes, she is, and she's 3 years old like yours.
Oh,
they're the same age.
Besties.
I don't think they could because Siggy chases cats, so cats don't like Siggy.
And Mooney's very timid.
Siggy follows a lot of Canadian Iggies, and one of the most famous Iggies in the world is called Iggy Joey. Well, actually, the most famous Tika, the Iggy, is Canadian. I believe she's based in Toronto.
I've seen Tika the Iggy online.
Or Montreal? Maybe she's in Montreal. And then Joey is in Toronto, and she was in a Mercedes-Benz commercial.
Oh my god, I hope it doesn't get to her head. I hope it does not get to her head.
Oh,
I fell in love. I've now been in love with Italian greyhounds ever since that TikTok. They
are the best. And they're quite cat-like. Like, I think if you like cats, you'll like Iggy's.
Gentle.
I don't know. So yeah, there's some Siggy content for you. Hope you all enjoyed that. But yeah, shall we say bye-bye in Toy Story 2? Is it Toy Story 2 with Barbie and Ken, or is it 3? Whatever. You know the one. The bye-bye now.
Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Right, let's do it in 3, 2, 1. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye-bye